So I'm going to continue on from the previous, I hadn't finished. We're going up to 95. So I'm just going to continue from where I left off after talking about, marriage and having a child and these things. So, 93, then 92, 93, up to 95. Now we settled in Alachua, and Harisari would work on Transcendental Diary Volume 2. And writing was not easy for him. It was a struggle. Some people, it just flows, and for others, so it was not easy. Each volume was like real, it was a struggle, writing, but he managed. And but at the same time, he had to sell the first books. And the best way to do that was just to travel, visit temples, give seminars, and carry the books and sell them. And it was really great. It really worked well. And of course, it's very satisfying. This is part of, the great hostile life. Then you have to figure out how to support yourself and everything. And sometimes that is a big challenge, And to be able to do something that will support you and at the same time will be enlivening and transcendental, that's, pretty ideal for devotees. So at this time, it was working. It worked for us. There weren't many devotees that were doing that around this time and, before internet and all these things. So, the travel, but, it's hard work. It's hard work, a lot of travel, a lot of lugging books around and things like that. But it was satisfying, and it was satisfying to know that he was doing and to support him in it in any way possible. And of course, I'm taking care of our new child. And, so some may wonder, what was it like, to have a child at 42 years old? 42. After 20 years pretty much in sort of a single life, ashram life. And I will say that it was tremendously rewarding and enlightening. And, not in just the goo-goo gaga sort of way, oh, my cute little baby. Although, of course, that is there. That's always there. But in a much, it gave me a much deeper understanding of life in general. And also the understanding of what a mega responsibility it is, to bring a living entity into the world, to be fully responsible, for a tiny, helpless creature that is 100% dependent on you. It's just very, very serious and most important seva. It truly, it's no joke when they say that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Mothers have a decisive influence on the future direction of society because they raise and nurture the next generation. So the quality of the population of the world is dependent on how well that is done. So, I had a lot more, down-to-earth and practical understanding of why Bhagavad Gita speaks of the importance of, protecting women, because they have such an important role to play. And I think it's very sad that society today often minimizes the importance and the value of that role. And what could be more important? Not that there isn't other important, very important services and work for women to do, but when one becomes a mother, what could be more important? I remember that in the morning, it would be before 7 in the morning because that's when we would go to the temple, but I would be sitting in our living room. And across the street, out the front window, there was a nursery. And I watched in the morning the cars pull up, and the mothers would be dropping off their kids, and they're dropping off babies at 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. And I'm a new mother, and I'm watching this, and I'm just like, it's just shocking to me. It's just devastating to me. I can't even imagine taking my baby that's sleeping right now and dropping her off somewhere. And I know, like my brother was telling me that, it's practically impossible nowadays for, even then, for people to live on one salary, one person's salary, that you need 2 salaries to, pay for a family. And it just needs to be acknowledged that this is something that just happened in a few decades. It's just a huge change in culture, because when I was a kid, almost everyone lived on one salary. I mean, there were women that were working, but it was more like that, well, they wanted to do that. It wasn't like you had to, it just wasn't like that. Such a drastic change in family values in such a short period of time. The traditional family was definitely under threat. When I was young, probably 75 to 80% of kids lived in a household with 2 parents, and it was their first and probably only marriage, and now, it's something like, 50% of homes are either single parent or unmarried, or parents with previous marriages and other children from other marriages, and and something like 70-80% of mothers are working. And another big change is that when I was growing up, it was 7% of households that had multiracial households. And now, and this is then, this was, 90s, early 90s, it was something went up to 50%. So these are just lots of changes in the outside, in the culture, new, challenges that were happening in the world. And of course, everything happened in the world, it impacts on us. We're part of the world. And, the fact that, family has, and of course we've got a double-edged thing because, the things going on in ISKCON, that's a whole nother challenge, but family, whether in the West or the East, it has always been the cornerstone of a healthy and thriving human civilization. There's just statistics that show, many statistics that show that a fully functional and loving family tends to breed, stronger children who become, the lifeblood of a healthy, future generations, So, these things changing rapidly. And, as devotees, we also have this other challenge, of how we view parenthood and everything in another way, and also the family. So, both from within our own institutional viewpoints and from without, what's changing externally, there's a lot going on that is important to see, what is happening to families. It's very, very important. Even in these days and nowadays, there's just immense pressure on women to both establish a career and a family. There's nothing wrong with that if that can be done, but it is known that this round-the-clock workload for women can take a very, very heavy toll on both their physical and mental health. What to speak of if they're, single mothers, which can impact, on the children in just numerous ways, And I was just personally experiencing that raising, just one child is just like a full-time occupation. Not that I was doing all services and things that I'd always done, but this is it's an occupation, in itself. And it's something that is just under-acknowledged and underappreciated, both inside and outside, and there's a need, to honor and respect the role of, women, and take more seriously the vast amount of energy a mother sacrifices for her young and how important her job is. I mean, we use this term mother, it's supposed to be respectful, but I don't know. It's usually not really understood. So this change in the world, because we're preachers, we're part of the world, we have to know what is going on with people, what are their challenges, and now, just in this time, since I was a kid, like it's not that long, everything has become industrialized. They even call it the childcare industry, the education industry, the health and medical industry. I mean, everything, the food industry is just evolving capitalism. Even the sports industry, like everything. Things used to be done just like for fun, or, just as people. But now everything is an industry. This is evolving capitalism. Everything is about money. And all these things are changing just radically. And I think that, it's a time coming because people are dissatisfied with many things now. This is coming to the forefront, and I think it's part of Mahaprabhu's mission, growing, that, people are going to reassess civilization, re-look at what have we been doing? How is this working out? How is this going? It's not going well. How do these things need to be changed? Both inside our movement and outside our movement. This is, really has to be looked at on all levels of society. What is happening? What is the culture that we're living in? And what kind of culture are we trying to create, So, for me, I found it totally immersive. It's different for everyone, having a child and bringing up kids. There's no one way. It's different for everybody. But for me, it was very immersive, and not just in a mundane way. It was like, maybe because I was older, but like any service that you take up. You have to put your mind to it. How do you do this in the best way? And, spiritual life never has to diminish because it's a consciousness, it's an attitude, it's a way we look, it's why we do something, So, of course, I have one child. If you have a whole bunch of children, it can be a lot more challenging to stay focused. But, there's ways, there are ways to do things. Like some mothers warned me that, it's probably going to be difficult to chant your rounds, and you just have to get through this, and, you can get back to it. And that was really frightening to me, really frightening, because I know that I am dependent on chanting just to be a decent human being, I think. So, it was important to me that I didn't lose that, so I made a very conscious effort. And I think conscious effort and priorities are very, very important, establishing what they are. What is it that I want to do? What am I trying to do? And so, because I knew for me as a person, if I lose a good habit, it's going to be very hard for me to regain it. And I just don't want to go there, So that was something I shared with my husband, like, look, if I don't do anything, if I don't clean the house, if I don't, go to the temple or whatever, I want to chant my rounds. So it was a learning curve. And which it is for everyone, and that's why I'm talking about it. We have to know, how do we do this in Krishna consciousness? How do we become mothers? How do we have children? It is a learning curve. But I wanted things to stay as much the same as possible. So I wanted to go to Mangal Arti. I've always gone to Mangal Arti, pretty much. So I tried, and it was so hard, and it was such a hassle. I wasn't sleeping well, baby wasn't sleeping well. There's always challenges about sleep with kids and everything. You're exhausted, the baby's exhausted, and you're going to get the kid up and get her dressed and put in the car seat and go to the temple, take out, and then they might cry, and then you have to nurse, And it was like, after a few days, I don't know how many days I tried to do that, but, I remember driving home, and I became aware that I was just like gripping the steering wheel, and tears just started flowing down my face, and I just pulled over the car, and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is not good for me, What is the purpose of going to Mangal? What is the purpose? Is to remember Krishna. Am I remembering Krishna? No. I am just agitated, exhausted, and irritable. And, then I thought, well, then why? What is this big struggle, And it's this false ego thing. And I'm just saying for me, what was the reason, It's not just that, I want to follow properly and I want to be a good devotee, I want to look like a good devotee, and there's this programming that, you're not a good devotee, you're not at Mangal, you're not doing this, you're falling into this dark well, and these kind of things are there, and they're, it's just terribly immature. Now, that's not to say, I know women that have taken their kids in Mangal Arti, and it's a piece of cake, and, it's individual. But the main thing is we have to look, what is helping me? What is favorable for your Krishna consciousness and what is not favorable? And you have to honestly assess that, Who am I trying to impress, What is that about? So I have to do this differently. It's not working, and I realized for me, I woke up at 2 a.m, last time nursing, and usually I was a bit wide awake. So I just started sitting up in bed in the dark, quiet, and chanting my rounds. And I don't say necessarily, I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying that it worked for me. It was wonderful. I let the baby sleep. I was a bit awake. I chanted all my rounds and I fell back asleep, and then I got up at 6 o'clock, and then we got ready for the temple, and it was bliss. It was like so nice, and I was happy to go to the temple, and she was happy. And so it's not, everyone has to find their way in Krishna consciousness. How are we going to do the practical things in life and keep up doing the best we can? The spiritual life is priority, because it's not just meant for yourself, but for your child and for your marriage. It is the priority, or, maybe some acknowledge it isn't the priority. Then, okay, live according to what you decide is your priority, and then things are more likely to go forward in a healthy way. And by making it your priority, I do not in any way mean that to be neglectful, Like some people think, yeah, I have to be really spiritual, so I've got to go to class, I have to go to this, and then I leave my kid, and our kid's running wild or something. No, that is a big misunderstanding. I've seen that, neglectful and improper care and lack of attention. That is not, that's not following, that's not focusing on spiritual life. That's not doing your service properly. If anything, you have to be more attentive, So this is something that I see, and it goes on still, that people misunderstand. Oh, I have to be spiritual, so, I'll go to class and my kids will be, running around like animals, But, service, whatever service you're doing, whatever service you're given, that is your blessing, that is your duty. And that's your priority because it's your service. So now I have this service. Before I had so many other services, and I still have other services. So it's a matter of consciousness why we are doing everything. But the most striking and immediate lesson for me as a mother, becoming a mother, was understanding what it means to protect another person. Because we talk about protection. And the feeling of being responsible for the protection of a child, that is such a big responsibility. And I really felt this responsibility and, understood that this term, protection, is often, misused, used in such a wrong way, in regards to, especially women and children, protection, they have to be protected, meaning, they have to be subjugated or controlled or, but, through having a child, it became so clear to me, to protect them is to make them the top priority, the topmost thing in your mind constantly. How to best facilitate everything for them. Always watching. You're always watching. Are they in any danger? Can they see everything? Is it too noisy? How can they participate in these things? And it's a constant meditation of putting them first, seeing to their physical and emotional and spiritual well-being. And that kind of mentality, that is real protection. And imagine if all protectors, were really thinking like that. That kind of protection, it feels very good and it is desirable, Anyway, someone may question, why am I talking about all this mundane part of my life? Isn't it just self-indulgent, No, because it's these kind of things the ordinary folks have to go through, getting married, having children. And we've seen the terrible mistakes that we have made. So yes, we have to rethink, relook, see how were we doing, how were we protecting. Well, I won't go there yet because, that's something, I'm taking it as things come in my life. But, dealing with finances and the ground reality of trying to be sadhakas in this world. So there we were in Alachua, and, this is a whole new kind of life for me. And for our story. And I want to talk about life in Alachua and, why were so many devotees were suddenly migrating in the 90s to this place, in the middle of Florida. And this was a time of significant cultural shift in ISKCON. It was a time when devotees who had been fully engaged in devotional service for decades, now saw that, the ashram mode of living was, outdated. We had grown too large to continue on as we were. We could not go on living in the same way. we could not depend on ISKCON to support us. It was not meant to do that. And it was up to individual devotees to figure out how and where they were going to live and survive and continue serving and progressing in spiritual life. Because our lives had not followed the normal course, of, education and career and marriage and, many of us had just bypassed, certain growth that was normally happens out in the world. We sort of started out with renunciation. It was like a little backwards, So more or less we put everything on hold in order to establish ISKCON. And for years, focus on the growth of the institution. That was the focus, the growth of the institution. And of course now, sometimes that was to the detriment of families, children, and personal growth. So after growing the institution, many needed to, grow up in ways that that had been perhaps stunted or neglected. So we had put aside, so much to establish the movement. And I don't think that anyone, maybe somebody, but I don't think many regret in any way what they did to assist. In fact, most people see that as the greatest time of their life and the greatest asset and the greatest honor to assist Srila Prabhupada in building this institution. But we know that there was some loss of just normal human growth, and now we would have to try to make up the difference to sort of catch up materially, emotionally, physically, And, I'm not saying that this was some sudden kaboom, but it was definitely not that everyone suddenly dropped their service, not at all. It was this gradual shift away from a renunciate tradition to a more family-based tradition. And, there was acknowledgement that the former lack of respect for the Grihastha ashram had been immature and had caused both men and women and children to suffer in a variety of ways. So now there was this need, clear need, to find more balance in our lives, more down-to-earth way to practically apply philosophy to life. And it is an absolutely natural process when any movement matures and grows and has gone through phases of expansion very rapidly. It is natural to then, settle down a bit and diversify and develop community. And, we had lived through an era of, perhaps too much institution and not enough individual. And it was necessary to get the job done. But now the decade of the 90s would be more about family and individual growth, and finding the value of the individual distinct from the institution or position, and to become householders that, actually hold houses. For many years, most people, didn't really have homes or, real houses, And, people had to fly their own plane, So, now it's a time to, shift of consciousness. And also, up to this point, the mood was more about recruiting people into the movement rather than transforming the world itself from where it is. And we were more about world transcending than world transforming. So now would be a time to make a bit of a shift in this somewhat. Of course, there is always some tension about how much emphasis should be put on one or the other, transforming the world or transcending the world. So depending on one's age and their varna, their ashram, their tendencies, etc., the emphasis will be more or less on transcending or transforming, and it shifts throughout life. So now there is more emphasis on engaged Vaishnavism, I think you could say, to some extent, engaging with the world differently, not just as a preacher, but as a community members, as part of the world, with all the natural human concerns that, come with that. So there was a natural need to learn to walk our talk, to not just pontificate our philosophy from some high place, but to live in a way that will be exemplary and eventually, hopefully, which would have a positive impact on different levels of society. So naturally, because people, they want to see how do we live? How do we bring up children? What kind of relationships do we have? And showing these examples, well, this is, new challenges keep coming, So now, a lot more diversity evolves, and of course not for everyone. Many devotees will continue on just as before within the organization with their full service schedule and whatever. But, others will maybe use skills they learned in the institution in order to make a living. Some will go back to school. This is a time where a number of devotees started going to university, trying to find a profession. And some will start to see the need, an actual need for farming and unfolding the ideas of varnashram, become more of a focus. And some will just need help from the government to survive. And, some will really struggle to find balance, So there's a lot of different things going on now. So now we're in this era where there are many things many ways to be a devotee, and many ways to practice, and different levels of commitment, as well as varying philosophical views. And, all of this is a lot to deal with, and not easy. Many devotees are in their 40s by this time, and they've given a lot, worked hard, sacrificed, and now they're trying to figure out how to practice differently, how to support themselves, how to heal from difficulties that are now becoming apparent with their children and with things that have gone on in the society, and with all these, gurus and philosophical issues that are coming up. And then at the same time, there's a pressure, they're under pressure to be the people that support the temple. And that's not easy. It's a lot, So why Alachua? Why was everybody? What was the big draw there? It was just that families were looking for stability, stable situation. And there was cheap land, very cheap land, like an acre for, something like $2,000 or something. I mean, it was something that even, we're like, oh my God, we could even figure out how to buy some land, There was cheap rentals, very cheap, or you could buy a mobile home with, such low, and there was a small school. So that was the big draw of Alachua. It had this, and, and it would also be, this would be a time of a rise of more, just talk of healing, both inside and outside. the increase, in counseling and healing arts. At one point someone started calling Alachua Temple New Ramen Reiki because everybody was, doing Reiki on each other and, just, trying to help each other. And it would also be a time now when there's more attention given to women's issues. I think the Vaishnavi ministry was formed around this time. Sudharma, they were very important women, Sudharma, Pranada, and many others just got involved in bringing attention to women's issues. Pranada started a newsletter called Priti Lakshana, where it was just to bring light, to bring awareness of things that had gone on, of women's issues and their contributions. And of course, this is, and around this time also, it came to light about, some abuses that had taken place in some Sankirtan parties. And, just because there had been, there was a general lack of acknowledgement for the part women played in establishing and building this society, and how much they had tolerated in doing so. Many women had spent decades on the streets, in airports, in parking lots, and living out of vans, and bringing in literally millions of dollars and distributing hundreds of thousands of books. Of course, the men also. I'm just saying that not as much acknowledged that they were doing this. There was no difference, there wasn't less expected from them because they're women, whatever, so some for 10, 15 years, and some still do, And I don't think many people nowadays have even an idea of what that would be like to live like that, the intensity of that kind of life, and how much, it's just astonishing. And the women did, 50% of the work to build the society. And of course, it was hard for young women, with also, not so much acknowledged, not much appreciated, and, many unsung heroes, and many, many men also, it's not just like a women's thing. But, thank Krishna that we know that he knows. And, but we should all also know and have gratitude. It's important. Gratitude, acknowledging and seeing, well, this has been done. And, it would also be a time when an interesting thing happened in Alachua with that when we first arrived there, the temple for Gornitai was a single wide trailer. It was Gornitai and in a single wide trailer. Now, even the subsidized housing that we lived in was far nicer than that, what Gornitai lived in. So, we became aware, hey, this can't, we have to do something, and we have to do it. There's nobody going to come in and do it, It's this community, all these people that have come here. And this is the first time in ISKCON where the householder devotees, they saw the need and they spontaneously came together, started having meetings, and, pooling all their money to build the Alachua temple. And that was a wonderful community event, and it brought people together, and it was a striking new way that something was done in the society. And of course, it helped so much to create a sense of belonging, that this is our temple. When you work for something and when you build it, you care a lot more than if you just come, it's there, it's rolling, So anyway, while we were in Alachua, Harisori was trying to write his second Transcendental Diary volume, and he traveled a lot, and that was, I described before, I would also help with this, and also continue to work on the Narottam Das Thakur book, and it was pretty much finished around this time. And I started trying to work on getting artwork done for it. And that was proving to be very difficult. And so that was just an ongoing thing, because I wanted very realistic art. I wanted it to look like real, not like a cartoon or fairy tale or something, that they're real people that just lived not that long ago. And they should look like, you know, how they may have looked, you know. I mean, they're Bengali. Bengalis look a certain way. You know, I had a dream in my mind. And I had a very hard time manifesting it, and eventually I didn't do it, you know. But I put the Narottam book, you know, on the side. I just, you know, had other things going, you know. But I want to mention that during our time there in Alachua, I was so happy that my daughter could go to just a fantastic nursery that was run there by Nadika Chandrika. Again, you know, unsung heroes, and so I want to sing them. It was all boys at the time, I think, you know, 11 or 12 boys or something, and Rasarani was going to be the youngest and the only girl, and Nadika she's very sensitive and caring. She wanted to create a special place for Rasarani, and she was very concerned. And, you know, after the first day, I came to pick her up, and she said, "Oh, no problem. Rasarani's bossing all the boys around." It worked fine. She didn't even go into her corner. And but I wanted to mention about this wonderful nursery, because we often hear so much about the failures, and we don't. But we don't also hear, you know, praise and acknowledge, you know, the successes. And this was one of them. That Nadika is just an amazing, dedicated devotee that many, many years brought up so many children in such a balanced, sane, healthy, devotional environment. And I just, you know, I want to at least say thank you. And, you know, and many places, you know, not just there, also in England, there's just an amazing devotee, Jagadatri, who, you know, is still going on in this service of caring for the young children. For 40 years, 35, 40 years, the same service, generation after generation, and giving them their foundation in Krishna consciousness. You know, the first guru, they're gurus. You know, they're teaching them all, you know, about Krishna. And it's such an important service. It's so important. And what it takes to do that, it's so much patience and dedication and Krishna consciousness. And, you know, there's not a lot of support. There's not a lot of money flowing towards it, you know. But I just want to, you know, I want to take this opportunity, at least from my own heart, you know, to give a gigantic round of applause for these amazing ladies that have done these services in a number of places. There's many more of them. There's many more that have done it well. So, yeah, because sometimes people just think everyone was just like a bunch of creepy, demoniac child abusers or something. And, well, no, there were a lot of really wonderful devotees that did wonderful services, you know. Now, there was around this time also this growing concern about Narayan Maharaj, and in 93, the GBC meetings, I think 93, you know, they questioned, there was a questioning of the affiliation of the senior devotees with Narayan Maharaj, thinking that this is starting to cause some divisiveness, some problems. But those that were involved, they kind of minimized the seriousness of it, of the relationship, and, you know, the GBC kind of just let the matter pass at that time. But while we were in Alachua, I mean, by this time, 94, we started to feel that Alachua was not the place we wanted to stay, although we greatly appreciated being there and we love so many devotees there. But, we just didn't have that kind of drive. We didn't want to work hard to try to buy a home and get some security and everything. We just, we're at our age, both of us, we just wanted to kind of stay in the same mode as we had, with the focus on just trying to serve and, try to keep life as simple as possible, rather than trying to, getting a house and all these things. I mean, we never had money. I never had money, and I didn't care. But I had everything. I traveled a lot. I did so many service. I did wonderful things. So, somehow Krishna always was providing what was needful for doing service. And, I just assumed that, we could continue on, hopefully in that way, So we decided to move to India because we thought this would be the place that we want to bring up our daughter. We thought it would be easier for our spiritual life and would be materially less demanding. It would be good for writing, and also I could continue the service that I do in Vrindavan all the time, doing the Didi outfits and getting things made, Didis made. And although I had more affinity for Vrindavan, we both felt strongly that Mayapur was the better place for Grihastha life, and which Srila Prabhupada had said. And, Prabhupada, when I was there with Prabhupada, he was very, very strict about Vrindavan and behavior in Vrindavan and everything. It's, more for renunciates, So we moved. And now before leaving Alachua, we had the first experience of my daughter got sick. She'd never been ill before. And she had very high fever, and I thought, I'm sure this is just, other mothers are saying, well, it's just a flu going around and this and that. But I just felt terrified. I just thought, I want to take her to the hospital. I don't care. I know I'm a an old mother who's only had one child, and I'm over the top, protective or whatever, but I just want to go to the hospital. And so my husband, he was just, okay, if you think we should, let's go. So we took her, and it turned out that it was a near-death experience, that she indeed was. So follow your heart, moms. And it was such a difficulty, that it truly was, a near death. And the experience of understanding your helplessness to care for and to protect and to control, and to really see how fragile this life is. It was, gigantic lessons and more difficulty that I ever experienced in my life, as far as, the fear for your own child's life. It's just, it's really something, and I don't know, how do people get through things like that without the mantra, without the holy name, and without the other devotees, and without the philosophy? We are so blessed. I mean, it may look like we're just going through the same things as other people, but being in the hospital, I saw, this is a very different experience for me. What's going through my head, and, talking with other mothers there, they just lost, so we're so blessed, But somehow we pulled through that, and we were very eager to move on to India and be back home where I feel in my element. So we'll finish there. Hare Krishna.